Well, welcome on back in to another edition of the Campaign Catch-Up. I am your host, John Stolnis. Joining me, as they always do, CBN News political analyst, chief political analyst David Brody, and host of the Quick Start podcast, Dan Andros. Fellas, good to talk to you. It's been a couple of weeks. How was y'all's Thanksgiving?
That was great.
Oh, absolutely. I'm registering different on the Richter scale afterwards. Let's put it that way. But it was good.
Yeah, I think we're all singing that tune for sure, but that's a happy song to sing, no doubt about it. I think as we look at ahead to this week's show, certainly there's still a lot of conversation going on Capitol Hill regarding President Trump's some of his picks to lead some of his cabinet positions, and the name now that Matt Gaetz is no longer the Attorney General nominee. A lot of the attention is now focusing on Pete Hegseth, his nominee to be, or his potential nominee to be Defense Secretary, and he's been meeting with members of the Senate, Republican leaders on the Senate over these last few days. And it seems like it's kind of on the edge here, teetering a little bit. And David, I guess I want to get your thoughts on this first, because you might have more of an insight into it than either Dan or I do. But if you like, is it teetering? Is that a good word to describe what we're seeing now with Pete Hegseth? Like, how shaky is his nomination, or is he on firmer footing than it sounds?
No, teetering is a perfect word. Yeah. And look, as you know, the Senate will be 53-47. So that means you can afford to lose 3 Republicans. And there's concern by more than 3 Republicans right now. And so, yeah, it's teetering. I think it goes to a couple of things. One, the vetting process by the Trump, the incoming Trump administration. I mean, one thing you don't want in a vetting situation is any surprises. And so the question is, where was all of this beforehand as it relates to what was vetted about him, and how much did they know? And clearly, my understanding from inside the Trump campaign is that some of this is a surprise to them. So because of that, it becomes even dicier. So we'll see. Now, having said that, I will say that he did this interview with Megyn Kelly. I watched the whole thing. It was about an hour and 10 minutes. She's really good, by the way. I mean, she just drills down and just doesn't play around. And he was actually very good. I mean, he basically, I'm going to summarize it in about 15 seconds. He basically says that he was this immoral guy 7 years ago, didn't do anything illegal and none of that. But he was this immoral guy that cheated on his wife. He's a serial cheater and had some drinking issues. And then he gave his life to Christ. And he talks specifically about that 7 years ago. And he says he's a changed man. He doesn't say that he doesn't make mistakes today. Of course, we all do, even though we've given our lives to Christ. But he says that he is a different man today than he was 7 years ago. And then he addressed the whole email with his mom and everything about how the mom retracted that email 2 hours after sending it. And she was just frustrated because of the serial cheating. So the point is that there's a road for Hegseth here. If he goes with the redemption road, if he goes with this idea that, hey, 7 years ago, this was me, I can totally get it, but I'm not that guy anymore. I think that might be able to slide him through potentially. But we haven't even talked about policy and all that other stuff. But from a personal standpoint, I think that's his best shot at this point.
Yeah. Well, I just jump in here, John. I mean, gosh, we couldn't have somebody in Washington, D.C. that's, a philanderer, a serial philanderer, or drinking, because I mean, right. DC is just too moral and pure for anybody to come in there and mess that up. Now, I'm not defending any of those behaviors, of course, but I just find it a little rich that people in DC are pretending like this is something they suddenly care about when obviously it's rampant in Washington, D.C. And so now I don't know Pete Hegseth, but I mean, I would think like particularly the claims of like drinking on the job. Producers and other people would be saying this is a problem. It would be a known thing. I would suspect if this was an ongoing thing, there would be stories. People would be talking about the time he came in drunk and then the time he did this and that. And so that's one area where I have an issue on some of these claims. Like, is he getting Brett Kavanaugh here with just here come the anonymous accusations and here they go? Now he is admitting to some things, as you're saying. So I'm not talking about those. I'm just talking about like the anonymous complaints here about him drinking at work and whatnot. So if there are ongoing issues, obviously that's a problem. But all of us, like you said, fall short in one way, shape, or form. But if he has a very specific redemption point that he's pointing to, particularly as Christians, we should understand that, your life before Christ is going to look different than your life after Christ. So if people come and say, you know what, yeah, that's when he had his moment, but he still was doing X, Y, and Z on a consistent basis after that, well, then you might have an issue. But, if that is truly his life pattern here, I would think that, especially if it's the truth, is going to play very well when he's having these discussions, or at least it should.
Agreed.
Right, and there's been some pushback. Certainly, the campaign to try and rehabilitate his image is to counteract a lot of these different reports that have been out there, is in full swing. His mother was on Fox News, I believe it was on Wednesday, talking about her son and supporting him and saying that he is changed. And there's more news reports are going to come out about past behavior for sure. I mean, I think we're gonna see that, and there's going to be the counteraction to those different stories as well. And so I think the people to really be watching for here during this whole process is, what are the Republican senators saying? Because first, he's got to go through committee. He's got to get through the Senate Armed Services Committee. We don't know exactly who's going to be on that committee in the next Congress. We know that most of the Republicans on that committee now who are reelected will probably stay there. Senator Wicker is the chairman, but that's why you're hearing so much from people like Tom Cotton, Mike Rounds, Joni Ernst, Kevin Cramer. All these people Tommy Tuberville, they all sit on the current Armed Services Committee, and one would expect that they'll be on the next Congress's Armed Services Committee as well. So Joni Ernst this morning was asked on Fox News, have you gotten to a yes yet? Have you heard enough to kind of point you in the direction of a yes? Because there's going to be Republican senators like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitch McConnell, who are going to be more skeptical, who are not going to be beholden to whoever Trump wants to put in there. And Joni Ernst is not one of those people historically. And she refused to say that she's been able to get to a yes with Pete Hegseth. And we've heard Lindsey Graham say things like, some of these reports have been pretty bad, but he deserves an opportunity to talk to us. Same with Josh Hawley. He's kind of said the same kinds of things. And so I think those are the keys to watch for here with Hegseth. What are the Republican senators saying, both publicly and in private? Because, David, we're hearing that the Trump campaign is starting to, it may at least informally, be thinking about different names, different possibilities, different replacements. Ron DeSantis's name is out there as a potential replacement, as a nominee for Pete Hegseth. What do you make of the Ron DeSantis name being out there?
It feels a little bit like a trial balloon. Having said that, I'm not saying there isn't some truth to it. It's hard to pin down right now. But I'll tell you this, that if DeSantis is considered, and if DeSantis actually becomes the nominee after all is said and done, get ready for Senator Laura Trump, because I tell you right now, there's going to be a deal that's going to be part of the package deal. I feel like it's a baseball trade, a senator to be named later, and that will be Laura Trump. I think it's one of those situations. But look, the key senator in all of this, I think, is Senator Joni Ernst. You mentioned her a couple of times. I mean, she's not only going to be on the Senate Armed Services Committee, but obviously as a female, I think she's going to take the lead here in terms of how some other folks might vote. Now, I want to be clear here that, the Trump folks believe that there's this mandate, and there is this mandate, but how far does that mandate stretch? And I think that's kind of, we don't know how far that mandate's going to get them. You would think in a normal kind of world, you get the benefit of the doubt, but when you bring up a Gates and you put in a Hegseth and we haven't even talked about Kash Patel. I mean, you throw some of this out there. I mean, how much bandwidth do you have in the mandate? And I think that's really the question. How much are you going to put these Republican senators in a bit of a bind to say, okay, I get it, you have a mandate, but this is a bridge too far. The conversely, I'll say this, that the senators have to think about, hey, Trump does have a mandate, and that the voters, especially in some of their states, depending on who the senator is, are going to get some pushback if they're not confirming some of Trump's nominees. So yeah, it's an interesting play.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, you run the risk, and maybe it's just a matter of how comfortable they feel in their own states, because you do run the risk. I mean, I see a lot of people, saying, well, there's the war hawk portion of the party that doesn't want anything to change within the Department of Defense. And they like the fact that, we go into all these wars and have our tentacles everywhere. And so when they see some of these names pop up, like a Lindsey Graham or someone that they consider sort of a war hawk, you're gonna see that critique come at them, and how much they're gonna have to calculate how much damage does this do to me in my home state, and can I stand on this? And the challenging part for, I think, the Trump administration right now is that in some of these nominations, like you said, David, there's only a couple votes they have to spare. Like, they've got to get this thing. So you might have this mandate, but if you got 4 or 5 senators who are just like, nope, well, it's just not going to go through. And so, yeah, you may have a mandate, or you may feel you have a mandate, but you're still going to have to, bring everybody on board with that. And, it's a lot of internal calculations going on. And the biggest one, like I said, being, I think, these ones that are standing up against some of these nominations, perhaps, if they really think this is going to do long-term damage to them. And some of these guys have been entrenched for so long that they probably feel essentially invincible on that front.
Yeah, John, one last point, just to put a button on this. Yeah. I think you got to look, and I don't have the list in front of me, so I'll have to take a look. It's going to make a difference as to which senators are up in 26 versus 28 versus 30. The ones that are up in 26 are going to be under a lot more pressure to back a controversial nominee than the ones in 28 and 30. They'll have more latitude. So that's important to understand too.
Right. And as we talk about getting through committee first, generally speaking, whatever party controls Senate, I think it's usually they have like a 1-seat edge in whatever committee it happens to be in. So, I mean, it is even, you need to, you can't even, I don't think even can afford to lose one member of the committee, but maybe, I don't know exactly what the numbers are going to look like in the next Congress, but like you have even less wiggle room if there's a member of that particular committee that's not on board with something. So it's got to get through there first before it can even get to Murkowski and Collins and McConnell and anybody else who might be in the way. So last thing on this, then I'm going to put you guys on the spot a little bit. What's the most likely scenario here? Is it that he pulls his name from consideration before a confirmation hearing happens? Is it that he gets a confirmation hearing but is not approved by the Senate? Or is it that he gets the confirmation hearing and becomes the next Secretary of Defense? Dan, let me start with you on that one. What do you think?
Oh my goodness,
scenario? That's hard.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, given the fact that Trump himself is already floating names out here, I'm going to say, if I had to guess, and again, this is I'm putting this at not a mortal lock at all. I would guess that he's kind of on the way to, unless he wows people in these conversations he's having in behind closed doors, more than likely another name gets put in there and this thing doesn't go. They just realize it's going to be a futile effort and they move in a different direction.
I'm with Dan on this. I agree. I think that I feel like this feels like a drip scenario. And because of that, and because, as Dan said, the trial balloons are already being floated. And there's one last thing too. Trump and anybody that's vetting these candidates, they don't like surprises. And there's been too many surprises here. And I think they're frustrated at Hegseth for not being more forthcoming with some of that stuff that came out. So it's making Trump look bad, and it's making the incoming administration look bad. And the last thing this administration needs is any sort of headache or craziness at the beginning of the term. They need to capitalize on the mandate and capitalize quickly. So if Hegseth becomes too much of a headache, then he's probably gone. And I'm thinking he's probably gone. I don't think he'll be in that nomination chair.
Yeah, I think that makes three of us, barring a surprise that none of us can see coming down the road. Let's transition to a controversial decision by President Biden during the course of the last few days, pardoning his son Hunter Biden from the different crimes, the crime he was convicted of, and then another crime he pled guilty to, gun crime, of course, and the tax charges that he was convicted of last year. It's been controversial because even a lot of members of the president's own party, fellow Democrats, are coming out against his decision to pardon Hunter Biden. David, I think that because he had said previously, specifically, that he would not pardon his son, now he has done a 180 and he has decided to go ahead and do that. It's just your reaction on the decision by the president, kind of surprising folks, I think, that he decided. Were you surprised?
No, absolutely not. No, and no one should be surprised. Seriously, is anybody surprised? Are people surprised? Even the Democrats knew that he was going to do this, but they're frustrated that they kept it kind of private. But no, absolutely not. John, this guy, it wasn't one time, John. I mean, he went multiple times, said he was not going to pardon his son, and then he pardoned his son. He's been lying. I mean, that's not analysis, that's fact. He lied, and he lied multiple times. And, this coming from the guy that was going to, restore morality after Trump in 2020. Give me a break. It's been the biggest farce in American political history. This guy is a serial liar. And I'm sorry, to say that, but actually, wait a minute. No, I'm not. Because if you go back to why Biden got out of the race to begin with a long time ago, what was in the 1980s, 87? I mean, it was plagiarism back then. Today, it's pardoning his son when he said he wasn't going to pardon his son. And then before, there's tons of lies going on with Biden. So it doesn't surprise me at all. It has tarnished his legacy. And quite frankly, it's moved the pardon bar, if you will. I mean, this, there won't be a leftist in this country. All the leftists are going to complain when Donald Trump pardons many of the J6ers. I'm not saying he's going to pardon them all, but he's going to pardon a lot of them. And he'll probably do it on January 20th. And I don't want to hear from one leftist in this country at this point, someone that backed Biden, that what Donald Trump is doing is ridiculous. After what Joe Biden just did, pardoning. Now, understand this idea that he's pardoning, his son. Okay, this isn't father knows best. This isn't like, your father and son relationship and it's a personal thing. No, you're president of the United States. There's the clemency clause in the U.S. Constitution. I mean, it gives you a wide spectrum of what to do there, and he has widened it. I mean, no one has done anything like this before. The closest it's gotten was Roger Clinton, when Bill Clinton pardoned Roger Clinton, his half-brother. And it sure wasn't for anything like this. So, look, bottom line is that it's just disastrous for Biden. Even Democrats are upset at him. I'm sorry, I can go on and on, but I'll stop.
No, I mean, I think what the sort of the worst part about this is not that, look, well, a couple things. Number one, the long distance and the umbrella that it cut. He didn't just pardon him for this specific crime. Right. It sure it gives credence to the idea that, that Hunter was essentially influence peddling for the big guy, because this happens to overlap right before, in 2014, a couple months before he got the gig at Burisma, right? So that just instantly doesn't look good. But the frustrating part about this, and I think the thing that looks really, really bad besides that, is the fact that the left, Democrats, and the media, they sort of and Biden hinge their entire sort of positioning, their moral positioning on this as being superior to their opponent, Donald Trump, by saying, like, look, our opponent's willing to do all these other things and pardon and go on, but he's accepting the outcome. And they made it a talking point. It was like the big talking point that they had to show that they were morally superior, that they were more committed to the Constitution and to the rule of law. And everyone ran with that. And it was a complete farce. Like, he went and did this, and, all of us should have seen this coming, that he was going to do this. So the way he should have done it was said, you know what? I don't like doing this, but I'm a dad. I'm torn. I'm a dad. This is my son, right? And so I want to get him help, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, that would have been a way more understandable way for him to play this over the last couple of years, as people were asking about that, and then it wouldn't have seemed so egregious. I mean, the gap, like I said, the 10-year thing would have seemed egregious no matter what. But the pardon itself, I don't think would have seemed as egregious if he was communicating to the American people that he was wrestling with this. And I think all parents would understand that, right? But he didn't do it that way. Instead, he tried to look superior to everyone else, tried to use that as a position sort of statement against Donald Trump. And then he went ahead and just did it anyway. And so I think that's the thing that probably looks the worst in all of this.
And 2 quick points, John, on that. And Dan makes a great point about going back to 2014. So this isn't just a pardon for Hunter Biden. It's in essence a pardon for Biden too. I mean, that's what really this is about. I mean, under 2014 is important here. That timeline's important. And number two, get ready for pre-pardons, whatever that means. I mean, this idea that, Fauci and well, who else? Who am I missing, guys? I mean, there's Fauci, there's
Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff,
yeah, all of them. I mean, we're going down the pre-pardon route. I mean,
and crimes you may have committed. Like what? Why not just pardon him for this specific charges that were against him, the gun charges and the tax charges? Why not just do that? What is this saying? Like, well, any other crime he might have committed that might turn up here in the next couple of days, he's pardoned for those too. What? I mean, so you're saying, I mean, obviously this is just, I'm using this example for the sake of exaggeration, but if we start finding body parts in his drywall, like, are we going to just say, well, he's covered on those? Like, I mean, come on. I mean, you can't do that.
Well, here's the argument that I have seen, and you guys tell me, and I'm whether it holds any water or not, but that the president, as you're astutely saying, was making the moral high ground argument during the course of these last 2 years, specifically with regards to, Donald Trump has not been shy about saying who he would pardon, the January 6th defendants and a lot of other folks, that they would get pardons if he were elected. And to a lot of Democrats and a lot of people who decided that they didn't want to vote for Trump, that was a part of the things that they didn't like about him, was that they thought that he would use the pardon process for his own personal gain. The problem is that most Americans didn't care, and they had other issues that were more important to them than the arguments that President Biden was making about integrity with regards to pardons and other areas. And so the argument here is, well, if this is what the American people think is okay, if they don't have a problem with Biden pardoning the people around him or even himself, it's kind of like if he can do it, well, then we can do it, sort of thing, because the American people have given me permission now to do this thing. They didn't, and not enough of them bought the argument that I was making that this was egregious, and so now I'm going to use it to my advantage, and I'm going to pardon my son, and that's the way that he's going to move forward with it. That's
a load of bunk. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Who's saying that? Seriously, who's saying that? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. People didn't vote for you. So you're saying, John, let me understand. Seriously, I'm trying to understand. So you're saying that
you've been watching Morning Joe again, John.
No. Yeah, wait a minute. I don't even understand the reasoning that Biden is okay with pardoning his son because people didn't care that Trump was gonna maybe pardon people like the J6 people, and that's the reasoning. That's insane.
Yeah, not the sole reason necessarily, but that it's clear that this isn't as big an issue for the American people as Joe Biden and other Democrats were making it out to be during the course of the campaign. Is the argument?
Dan, I don't know where you stand, but I want to retract what I said. It's not bunk. It's bunk 72 font. Back to you, Dan.
Yeah, I don't buy that. I mean, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I would say, like, because the other argument I've been hearing in defense of this is the one of saying, like, well, he's going to come after us now, and so we've just got to go do these pardons because he's going to go after. Which I also don't think that's a great argument either, but I do think it's at least a little bit more plausible than the previous one posited there. Now, I think, I think that's a stretch at best.
Well, that's fair enough. It's not an argument that I'm necessarily buying, but wanted to throw that into
for sure
and see. And you mentioned the pre-pardons, wanting to pardon ahead of time Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, Anthony Fauci, who have not committed any crimes, have not been accused of committing any crimes, but preemptively trying to prevent some of the any potential crime prosecution that they might undergo in a Trump administration. I mean, is that even? None of us, I don't think, are lawyers. We can't really answer this specifically, but I don't know that you can get pardoned for a crime you haven't committed yet. That part of it doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I have no idea, but I'll tell you this. You know what Joe in the middle of America is thinking? He's thinking, wait a minute, why are they pre-pardoning people? What are they hiding here exactly? Because here's the thing: if you've got nothing to hide, why are you pre-pardoning anybody? Seriously, I mean, like, in other words, their argument's going to be, oh, because Trump's just going to go after them. Well, hold on for a second. If you've done nothing wrong and everything is dotting I's and crossing T's and there's no problem, then why are you even concerned about Trump going after you? Because there's nothing there. There's no there. So like, I don't get, I mean, I get what they're going to say. They're going to say Trump's going to do it, but there's nothing there, according to what they're saying.
Can I posit something here? Maybe this is a little bit of projection from the left here because of what happened and what they did to President-elect Trump with throwing completely, kind of dubious charges at him and then doing it in a liberal district with a liberal judge, knowing that they had a favorable chance of getting a conviction when nobody can really even name what the crime exactly was that he did. Maybe they know, given how that all went down, that those tables are going to get turned right around back on them.
It's certainly it's going to be an interesting next few weeks as we transition out of the Biden administration and into a Trump administration. We're likely to see things maybe we haven't seen before. So we'll see how that shakes out, and we'll see how some of these nominees or these potential nominees that Trump has named, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, some of the others that Kakash Patel, whether or not, what their process looks like moving forward. But make sure that you are sticking with us through it all. We'll break it all down for you every week. David, Brody, Dan Andros, thank you for joining me once again.
All right, John.